You know how they say you can sometimes feel when your life is about to change? Like the air gets thick, heavy, like it's holding its breath. Yeah, I didn't get that. I just woke up. The first thing that hit me wasn't the stench of betrayal or the guilt or even anger. It was the smell of cheap cologne, something musky and desperate, the kind that tries too hard to impress. And right there, right in the bed I bought, in the house I built, was my wife. And some guy. Some guy. It's funny. Your brain doesn't give you a warning when you see something like that. It doesn't whisper, "Hey, brace yourself." No, it just punches you right in the gut and leaves you there gasping. He was asleep, sprawled out like he owned the place, like he belonged. Sheets tangled around his hairy legs, his mouth open in some kind of drunk, pathetic snore. And there she was, curled up against him, her face soft, peaceful, like this was normal. Like this was fine. I didn't think. I didn't need to. One swift movement. One bone-deep instinct. I swung my fist so hard into his face that I felt his teeth crunch like gravel under my knuckles. He didn't even get a chance to wake up, just a muffled grunt, a spray of blood, and then dead weight hitting the mattress. He rolled off the side like a rag doll, moaning something that didn't sound much like English anymore. "My wife, Jessica," she screamed. But it wasn't a scream of pain or horror. It was anger. Anger at being caught. She scrambled out of the bed, wearing nothing but the betrayal she'd wrapped herself in. She bolted for the door, hair wild, clutching a sheet around herself like modesty meant a damn thing now. She ran. And like an idiot, I followed. Down the stairs, past the family photos she'd insisted we hang up, vacations, birthdays, fake smiles built on lies I hadn't even known were festering yet. She yanked open the basement door and disappeared into the darkness below. I should have stopped. Should have let her run, let the shadows swallow her whole. But no, I had to see it through. I needed something. An answer. A reason. A final act. The basement was cold. Still. Too still. The only sound was the creak of my own footfalls against the old wooden stairs. The air smelled musty, damp, the kind of smell that gets under your skin and stays there. I reached the bottom and stopped. The place was plunged into silence. No movement. No breathing. No Jessica. Only the faint hum of the old freezer in the corner, the one we kept for emergencies, rattling like a death rattle. My heart thudded in my chest. I turned slowly, scanning the darkness. The basement was half-finished, concrete floor, exposed pipes, but there were closets built into the back wall. Storage, mostly. Old Christmas decorations, tools, junk we never got around to sorting. The closet door was slightly ajar. Something in me, something primal, knew she was there. Hiding like a child who broke a vase and thought a game of hide and seek would erase the damage. I walked toward it. Slowly. Every step dragging the weight of a dead marriage behind me. My hand closed around the handle. Cold. Slick with sweat. I yanked the door open. And froze. It wasn't Jessica cowering inside. No. It was. Something else. Something twisted and wrong. My stomach dropped. My blood turned ice. There, sprawled against the back of the closet, was Jessica. Her eyes wide open. Unmoving. Her lips tinged blue. Her body. Already cold. I staggered back, breath catching in my throat. Karma had already beaten me here. And in that moment, standing there in that damp, silent tomb of a basement, I realized something. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. I stood there for what felt like hours, just staring at her. Jessica, the woman I had fought for, bled for, built a life for, now just another broken thing in a house full of them. Her body was twisted, half sitting, half slumped against a box of Christmas lights we never hung up. One hand was clenched tight around something small and black, half hidden by the folds of her crumpled sheet. I moved closer, each step heavy, deliberate. No trembling hands. No sobs. Just a cold, mechanical need to know. The object she clutched was a syringe. Empty. The kind used for quick fixes and quicker ends. I knelt beside her, the concrete biting into my knees. There was no pulse. No faint rise and fall of breath. She was long gone, her final act written out in a single selfish decision. I almost laughed. Almost. Of course. Of course Jessica would find a way to make this all about her. She couldn't just face what she'd done. She had to escape it. Leave me with the wreckage. Upstairs, I heard a low groan. Teethless Wonder was waking up. Good. I wanted him awake. I rose to my feet, my body moving like a machine, stiff, methodical, and went back upstairs. He was still sprawled across the floor, clutching his mouth, blood pooling beneath him like he was some kind of slaughtered pig. When he saw me, he whimpered, trying to push himself backward, dragging his broken body across the hardwood. I stood over him, silent. He tried to speak. All that came out was a garbled mess of blood and teeth. Pathetic. I crouched down beside him, meeting his swollen, panicked eyes. "You should leave," I said, voice low, measured. "You should leave and never come back. Because if I ever see you again, I won't stop at your teeth." He nodded frantically, the movement jarring something loose in his mouth. A bloody tooth clattered to the floor between us. I stood up and stepped over him, heading to the kitchen. The house felt different now. Hollow. Dead. Every framed picture on the walls mocked me, a slideshow of a life that had been rotting from the inside out while I smiled like an idiot for the camera. I poured myself a whiskey, neat, heavy, and downed it in one burn. It didn't help. Nothing could scrape the taste of betrayal off my tongue. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we used to plan our future. Babies. Vacations. Growing old together. All lies. The guy stumbled out of the front door, clutching his face, leaving a smeared trail of blood down the hall like a slug oozing out of my life. Good riddance. I stared at the front door long after it slammed shut. Then I went back downstairs. Jessica was still there. Of course she was. Still wearing that stupid sheet, still clutching that stupid syringe, like she was waiting for an apology I wasn't going to give. I sat down on the bottom step, staring at her from across the basement. And for the first time since waking up, I spoke to her. "You really thought you could get away with it, huh?" My voice echoed in the empty space. "You thought you could cheat, lie, steal years off my life, and just skip out when it got messy?" Silence answered. "You were wrong, Jess," I said, leaning back against the stairs. "You're not leaving." "Not yet." I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Not because I wanted to hurt her. Not because I needed revenge. But because when the cops came, and they would come, I needed to be ready. I needed them to see the truth. No sob stories. No fake tears. Just cold, hard evidence of the life she chose and the ending she earned. Because if Jessica taught me anything, it's that you don't survive betrayal by forgiving it. You survive by documenting it. By turning pain into power. The pictures were brutal. Every flash of the camera carved another scar into the story we'd built together. Jessica slumped against the closet wall. The syringe clutched like some sick trophy. The sheet, stained and tangled around her legs, barely preserving what little dignity she hadn't already shredded. I didn't shy away. Didn't flinch. You only get one shot to tell your side of the story when the world comes crashing down. And I wasn't about to let her ghost rewrite the ending. After the last shot, I pocketed the phone and just sat there, staring. The quiet in the basement wrapped around me like a noose. I could hear the soft hum of the old freezer, the faint creak of the pipes in the walls. And underneath it all, the crushing, relentless silence of a future that had just been burned to ash. Eventually, I forced myself to move. Mechanical steps, one after another. I went back upstairs and stood in the middle of the living room, turning a slow circle. Everywhere I looked, I saw her fingerprints. The throw pillows she just had to have. The overpriced candles that smelled like desperation. The art on the walls, fake minimalist nonsense she pretended to understand. This wasn't a home. It was a damn stage set. A place built to impress other people, not to live in. How had I not seen it before? I moved from room to room like a ghost, taking it all in. The master bedroom, where she brought another man into our bed. The bathroom, where her lotions and perfumes lined the counter like a parade of broken promises. The office, where bills sat unpaid while she bought new shoes and whispered lies into another man's ear. I ended up in the kitchen again. Of course I did. That's where it all started. Where we shared meals, talked about nothing, pretended to be a family. Where she smiled across the table at me, eyes shining with secrets she thought I'd never uncover. There was a knife block on the counter. I stared at it for a long time. At the gleaming row of blades, each one sharper than the last. It would have been easy, you know. So damn easy. One quick move. One final cut. But I wasn't going to end up on the evening news. I wasn't going to be the villain in someone else's sad little tragedy. No. She made this mess. She chose this ending. And now it was mine to finish. I grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the pantry and poured another glass, the amber liquid catching the harsh light of the kitchen. As I drank, I started making a list. Not on paper. In my head. A list of everything she had touched. Everything she had poisoned. The bank accounts. The mortgage. The insurance policies. And the will. God, the will. I had changed it last year after her first little business trip that didn't quite add up. Back when there was still a flicker of doubt in my gut. Back when I still thought maybe, I was the problem. I wasn't. And now, because of that one act of stubborn hope, everything was going to stay mine. The house. The car. The savings. Jessica had nothing. No rights. No claims. Just a cold basement and a junkie's exit. Poetic, really. I finished my drink and set the glass down with a heavy thud. It was time to call it in. I grabbed my phone, thumb steady, and dialed 911. The operator picked up after one ring. 911. What's your emergency? I took a breath, steady and controlled. My wife, I said, voice flat, emotionless. I think she overdosed. I need an ambulance. The words felt hollow. Practiced. Like I was just another actor playing his part in a tragedy nobody would ever fully understand. The operator asked for the address. I gave it. She asked if Jessica was breathing. I said no. There was a pause. A soft, practiced sympathy in her voice when she said help was on the way. I hung up before she could say anything else. No words could fix this. No sirens could erase what had already been done. I went to the front door and opened it wide. Let the night air flood into the house. Let it carry away the last traces of who we used to be. And then I waited. Waited for the flashing lights. Waited for the questions. Waited for the next chapter in the story Jessica thought she was writing without me. The sirens started as a low whine in the distance, growing louder, closer, until they were screaming in my ears. The house, our house, lit up with red and blue flashes, painting everything in the colors of chaos. Neighbors peeked through curtains, porch lights flicked on down the street, and the vultures started to gather. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, waiting, not pacing, not wringing my hands, just standing there like a man who had already accepted the end of the world. The first paramedic barreled up the driveway, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a mouth set in a hard line. Inside, I said, jerking my head toward the open basement door. She didn't ask questions. Not yet. Two more followed with a stretcher and a bag of equipment I knew they wouldn't need. Jessica wasn't getting up. Not now, not ever. A cop car rolled up next. Two officers stepped out, one young, nervous, still new to the taste of blood in the air. The other older, thicker, the kind of man who had seen too many homes like mine fall apart in the middle of the night. I didn't move as they approached. Didn't even blink. Sir, the older cop said. His voice was rough, but not unkind. My wife, I said. She's downstairs. I found her. I think she overdosed. The paramedics disappeared into the basement, their heavy boots echoing off the concrete walls. The younger cop flinched at the sound. Mind if we come in? The older cop asked. I stepped aside, letting them in without a word. Inside, the house was a crime scene wrapped in a Pottery Barn catalog. Neat. Perfect. Except for the smear of blood trailing down the hallway where Toothless Wonder had dragged himself out. The younger cop noticed it right away. What's this? He asked, pointing. I shrugged. Long story, I said. Not important anymore. He looked like he wanted to press, but his partner gave a subtle shake of his head. Priorities. I led them to the kitchen and sat down at the table, hands folded neatly in front of me like a kid waiting for the principal. The older cop pulled out a notepad. Tell me what happened. I told him. Calm. Measured. Truthful, mostly. Woke up. Found her missing. Heard noise downstairs. Found her like that. Left out the part about the man in my bed. Left out the part about knocking his teeth out. They didn't need that right now. Hell, maybe they never would. One of the paramedics came back up the stairs, his face carved from stone. She's gone, he said simply. The older cop nodded like he expected as much. The younger one swallowed hard, looking anywhere but at me. They zipped her into a body bag, folded her up like dirty laundry and wheeled her out the front door while the neighbors watched from their windows, pretending not to. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't beg for her to come back. I just watched the woman who betrayed me get carted off like yesterday's trash. And for the first time in months, I felt lighter. Not happy, not free, just lighter. Like a tumor had been cut out of me without anesthesia. The older cop leaned against the counter, watching me. You gonna be okay? He asked. I nodded. Because what else was I going to do? Break down? Fall apart? Not a chance. I had survived the worst of it. Now all that was left was cleanup. And payback. The paramedics and cops packed up and left me alone in the house that betrayal built. The clock over the stove ticked in the silence. 3:37 a.m. The hour of regrets. The hour of reckoning. I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, replaying every moment of the night in my head. Jessica thought she could burn my life to the ground and walk away from the ashes. She thought karma would miss her. She was wrong. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. She wasn't the only one who needed to pay. There were others. The man in my bed. The so-called friends who knew and said nothing. The people who smiled at my face while laughing behind my back. They had all played a part. And I was done playing the fool. Done being the nice guy. It was time to even the score. The house was dead silent, except for the ticking clock and the soft creak of the hardwood floor beneath my chair. I sat there for a long time, making a list in my head. Not a grocery list. Not a to-do list. A reckoning list. Everyone who had a hand in this betrayal. First on the list. Him. The guy she thought was good enough to bring into my home. Into my bed. I didn't even know his name. He was just a face, a bloody, broken face by the time I was done with him, but that would change. I had pictures. I had security cameras on the porch that caught his sorry face in perfect detail as he stumbled out into the night, clutching his mouth like a scared animal. Finding him would be easy. Second on the list. Her friends. The ones who winked and whispered and turned blind eyes every time she slipped out in a new dress. The ones who encouraged the late nights, the lies, the fake girls' weekends that always ended in hotel rooms she didn't book alone. Third. Our neighbor. Derek. Smarmy, half-drunk Derek who always found an excuse to mow his lawn when Jessica sunbathed in the backyard. Who grinned a little too wide, lingered a little too long, whose wife had once drunkenly warned me at a barbecue, "You watch your girl around him." I hadn't listened. I was too busy being the good husband. The provider. The idiot. I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the floor, and grabbed another glass of whiskey. Poured it slow. Savored the burn this time. No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more playing the honorable victim. No more trusting people who smiled while sharpening the knives behind their backs. This time, I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to punch. No, I'd learned something from Jessica. The most devastating destruction happens quietly, subtly, elegantly, like slipping poison into a wine glass. I took my laptop out from under the coffee table and powered it up. In the old days, I'd use it to pay bills, shop for birthday presents, maybe look up DIY tips for fixing a leaky faucet. Tonight, I was going hunting. The first thing I pulled up was the security feed. There it was clear as day. Jessica and her mystery man stumbling up to the front door like a couple of drunk teenagers. She keyed in the alarm code without even glancing at the camera. He staggered behind her, carrying a half-empty bottle of something cheap and a cocky grin that made my fist clench all over again. I froze the frame where his face was clearest. Zoomed in. He looked young. Too young. And dumb, the kind of arrogant, muscle-for-brains look you see in guys who think life owes them something just because they're pretty. Perfect. I uploaded the image to a reverse search site. Took about 5 minutes. Turns out Pretty Boy was local. Had a public Facebook profile full of flexing gym selfies, shirtless fishing trips, and comments from women who didn't realize they were dodging a bullet. Name: Blake Turner. 26 years old. Personal trainer. Worked at a chain gym about 15 minutes away. Lived with 2 roommates in a rundown apartment complex with broken security gates and garbage in the parking lot. Easy prey. I smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had nothing left to lose. I leaned back in the chair, sipping my drink, staring at his face. I could destroy him. Right now. I could leak the security footage. Send screenshots to his job. To his clients. To his church-going mother, who posted passive-aggressive Bible verses on his Facebook wall every Sunday. But no, not yet. The best revenge isn't fast. It's slow, precise, surgical. I closed the laptop and leaned back, feeling a strange kind of peace settle over me. Jessica was gone. The cancer had been cut out. Now it was time to remove the rest of the rot. Piece by piece. Brick by brick. I stood up, finished my drink, and walked to the window. The neighborhood was dark now. Still, pretending everything was fine. But I knew better. I smiled again. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Morning came like a slap across the face. No warmth. No sunrise smiles. Just gray light bleeding through the blinds and the cold ache of everything Jessica destroyed. I sat at the kitchen table. Same chair, same table. A cup of black coffee burning in my hand, my laptop open in front of me. I wasn't tired. Couldn't afford to be. Today wasn't about grieving. Today was about pulling the first thread until the whole rotten sweater unraveled. First order of business. Blake Turner. I already knew where he lived, where he worked, but what I needed was leverage. Real leverage. So I dug. It didn't take long. A few open-source background checks, a quick scrape of his social media, a look into some public court records. Turns out Blake had a history. Minor stuff. Bar fights, unpaid parking tickets, a restraining order from an ex-girlfriend he swore blew things out of proportion. Nothing huge, but enough. Enough to paint him exactly how I needed to. I spent the next 2 hours crafting a very special email. No threats, no blackmail. Just a simple, anonymous tip sent to his gym's corporate office, complete with carefully selected screenshots from the security footage. No context. Just Blake Turner, staggering drunk into a married woman's home at 2 a.m., the married woman who happened to have a history of substance abuse. A concerned citizen, I called myself. Attached a short, polite message. Dear Corporate, I thought you should be aware of the behavior of one of your trainers, Blake Turner. I believe it reflects poorly on your company's commitment to professionalism and client safety. Attached are images for your reference. Hit send. Sat back. Took another sip of coffee. It was a small move, but it would be enough to start the avalanche. In a few days, maybe even a few hours, Blake's life would start to crumble. His job, his reputation, his carefully curated image of the good, clean fitness guru. All gone. And the best part? I wouldn't even have to lift a finger after today. He'd do the rest of the work for me. Scrambling, lying, burning bridges he didn't even know he needed yet. I closed the laptop and looked around the house. Stillness. Emptiness. But also possibility. Jessica had spent years turning this place into a shrine to appearances. Instagram-ready decor, spotless floors, the perfect image of the perfect suburban marriage. Now it was just me. Me in the wreckage. I was about to start cleaning it all up, literally, when the doorbell rang. Sharp. Insistent. I froze for a half second, the old instincts kicking in. Fight or flight. Then I pushed it down. Wiped the expression off my face. Opened the door. It was Derek, the neighbor. The one whose eyes always lingered a second too long. He stood there with a casserole dish in his hands, the kind they sell at Target with little faux rustic sayings etched into the side. Hey man, Derek said, shifting awkwardly on the porch. I heard the sirens last night. Me and Linda just wanted to say, we're sorry for your loss. He held the dish out like it was a shield. I stared at it. Loss. Funny word for it. Thanks, I said, taking it from him. The thing was still warm. Meant his wife, Linda, who always gave Jessica those tight-lipped smiles that barely masked her contempt, had been up at the crack of dawn baking for the guy whose wife just overdosed on betrayal. Anything you need, man, Derek said, rubbing the back of his neck. Seriously, you know where to find me.